Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Branded. My name is Sarah, and today we are saying out loud the thing that you've been avoiding. There is something in your business right now that you haven't looked at in a while, I bet, and you're not alone. And it's not because you forgot about it, right? It's because you already know what you'll find, so you're avoiding it. And honestly, you're probably not quite ready to deal with what you're going to find. Maybe it's your website. Yes, it technically converts, but you also edit it every time, you're about to launch something new because it just isn't quite right. Maybe it's your CRM where you're organizing all your clients. You know the data's kind of off and that your contacts are organized in a way that, sure, it made sense 2 years ago, but not now. Now it's just a jumbled mess. So you keep closing the tab. You're like, oh, I'll come back to it later. Maybe it's your onboarding system. It works most of the time, but you've made so many small adjustments along the way that you've stopped being fully aware of like what it actually delivers anymore. And every week you don't open these tabs and give them your attention, you're making a quiet decision not to, oh, I'll fix it later, but to just keep carrying it longer. That's what this episode is about. So strap in. Here's the thing about postponing an infrastructure rebuild at your level. It rarely looks like avoidance. It actually looks pretty freaking reasonable, right? You're busy, the business is growing. There are things that feel more urgent, such as an upcoming launch, a client deliverable, a strategy that needs your attention right now. So you move the infrastructure build next month. Do it next month. And then next month, you move it again. And it becomes this vicious cycle. And the whole time you're doing this, it sounds really reasonable because, yes, you're prioritizing. Yes, you're managing your bandwidth. Yes, you're being realistic about what you can take on. But underneath all of that, something else is actually happening. You already suspect that when you finally open those tabs, you're not going to find something small. You're going to find how much of your business was built for a version of you and your brand that you've already outgrown and left behind. How many pieces of your business no longer match each other? How many things technically work, but they just don't feel clean? How many workarounds have you quietly built that you've stopped even noticing? And that is the part that you're really avoiding, not the actual work of rebuilding your infrastructure, but the confirmation that it's time. Because once you see that clearly, you really can't unsee it. And it's no longer something that you can reasonably postpone. Now you see it as there's the standard that my business is here, but my infrastructure is here. Standards need to be raised. It's time. So instead, maybe you leave the tab closed because you're not ready to truthfully confirm that for yourself, right? You just let things run sort of wonky like they have been, and you just keep adjusting around it. But this is where things get interesting. Clients are coming in, emails are sending, revenue's happening. So from the outside, your business, it really does look like it's running on all firing on all cylinders, right? But you're relying on systems that you simply don't trust. And that creates a specific kind of mental friction that it's hard to name, but impossible to ignore once you know what to look for. So you probably hesitate to send people to your sales pages, but only long enough to wonder if everything is still current. Are you like, is that from my last offer? Did I update something? Is the wording still right? Is the price right? Right? You hesitate just long enough to be like, oh, okay, send, here's the link. Maybe you reread emails that you've reread 1,000,001 times because you're just not trusting them. Or you do some like quick mental checks of some automations that you have, because things are working But so many times things fall through the cracks, and now it's just a habit of yours to check it. You avoid opening certain parts of your back office unless you absolutely have to. Like, completely avoid it. You're like, I'm not going to do it. I don't have the time for that. And when you open them, you're always bracing for impact. So, none of this kind of friction, none of it's super dramatic or loud and in your face, but it's always there. And that's why we're talking about it. And here's the part that no one, like, this is what it's costing you. And nobody's really talking about this part of it. It's not just your time. Yes, it's obvious that your time is being sucked when your infrastructure doesn't support your business. That's obvious. The part that no one really talks about is the quality of your attention that gets compromised. When part of your brain is quietly monitoring the infrastructure of your business, it's not available for the things that actually move your business forward, such as a conversation with a potential client that needs your full attention, or decisions that really can't be made unless you have clarity of thought. And this half-assed way of showing up, it's not because you're lazy or distracted. It's because you're simultaneously leading your business and acting as its support system simultaneously. That's hard to do. And you've been doing it for so long that it just feels like it's part of the job now. But you might be surprised to know that that moment of decision, when you decide, okay, I'm ready to rebuild my infrastructure, when you finally decide enough is enough, it's time for a rebuild, that actually looks pretty different than what you might expect. It's not like a moment of crisis. It's not a launch that goes sideways or a system that like fails publicly. It is so much quieter than that. It's a Tuesday afternoon. You're between calls. You open a tab you've been avoiding for like 3 weeks or more, and you look at it. You really look at it, and something in you just lands. And it feels so true and so clear. And this is that feeling when you're ready for a rebuild. And you've known it for longer than you're comfortable admitting, right? Let's be honest. But in that moment, one of two things happens. Either you close the tab and you tell yourself, okay, I'll deal with this after the next thing, which we both know you won't, because there's always a next thing. There's always something standing in the way of this work being done for your business. Or you sit with it for a minute and you just let it be true. You just confirm to yourself, I have outgrown my infrastructure. This happens every couple years as my business grows and evolves. This will continue to happen. So you sit with it and you let it be true. Your systems have outgrown the way they were built, not because something went wrong. It's because something went right. Your business grew, you grew, and the infrastructure simply hasn't caught up yet. And the second that becomes real to you, the decision to rebuild your infrastructure, it really isn't complicated. You stop trying to compensate for it and you simply start rebuilding it. This is the distinction that I want you to kind of see. Compensating and rebuilding feels similar in the short term because both of them keep the business running, but only one of them actually solves the problem. Compensating is adjusting the sales page before every launch. Rebuilding is making that sales page something you never have to touch again. Compensating is manually adjusting and checking whether an automation fired. Rebuilding is making it something you find out through a notification, not a habit of constantly checking your work. Compensating is carrying a mental list of everything your business is doing. Rebuilding is not needing that. And the difference between the two is not your capability, because obviously you're capable. You've built this whole damn business. It's beautiful. The difference is the permission that you give yourself, the permission to say that the standard has shifted, the standard has elevated, that what was good enough to get here is not what is needed to operate properly at this level. That outgrowing the infrastructure is not a failure. It's actually evidence that your business is working. You're not in the stage where you have to prove you can build something anymore. You're in the stage of deciding whether the thing you built is going to keep running on your effort or whether it's finally going to run on its own. So if you've been moving through your business with that quiet sort of hum in the background, the one that tells you something needs attention, but it never quite makes it to the top of the to-do list, this episode was for you. It's not because you're behind. It's not because something is broken. You already know, and knowing is the hardest part. The rest, the rebuild, that's just the work, right? But confirming that it needs to be done, that is the hardest part. Share this episode with a business owner that maybe needs to hear it, because these are conversations that I think we have. A lot of us have them internally, but we don't necessarily externalize what we're thinking and feeling. And sometimes we just need to hear it said out loud. You're avoiding it, and it's not because something went wrong, it's because something went right. So give it the attention it deserves. I'll see you next week in a brand new episode. Share this with a friend who maybe needs to hear it. I hope you have a great day. Bye, guys.